What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit more about just how simple the law of assumption really is, and not to sit there and overcomplicate it and start filling your consciousness with all these rules. And that's part of the old nature, is to have conditional love, that's surrounded by all of these rules, and so a lot of these times these rules just kind of put you in a box anyway, and they really don't apply for every situation, because really every situation is unique on some level. The more that you start to become still and present and realize your dreams and your desires, the God-given desires, and realize that God's already blessed you with all these things. And it's really about kind of stewarding what you already have, because what you already have is a reflection of your faith, your assumptions about reality, your beliefs, really your inner man being externalized. And as you start to make that connection, you're able to look outwards, but then use that as almost like data. It's just like, oh, well, I see a repeating pattern. And instead of just reacting unconsciously and, bring how you would deal with it in the past, which maybe be lashing out at it, trying to destroy it, try to just avoid it, choose to kind of handle it differently. Choose to. One of the things I've realized through facing a lot of fear is that there's a kind of a feeling of fear, but once you're able to hold on to just like the present moment, you can feel the fear, realize that, okay, that's what it is, but then choose to be at peace instead. It's like, I'm not going to keep creating that, because what happens is, if I believe that fear, well, then next thing you know, I'm going to probably manifest it. It's just like, it starts to become like, do I really want to continue to hurt myself and experience what I don't want and just live in this shadow world of horror? Or do I want to right now kind of choose to be different? It really is that simple, And the old mind likes to convolute and like, oh no, it's not that simple. You gotta do X and Y, and you gotta do this and that. You gotta follow the law, and that's part of like the biblical aspect of this thing, where I feel like that understanding of what grace means, is like Jesus already did the work, and actually, Jesus is inside of you, the Holy Spirit's within you, so getting out of this entire paradigm of looking to the outside, external experts out there, it's getting more and more obvious that the expert is within you, and getting more and more in tune with that, being able to hear that inner voice, that inner guidance system better and better, is really the best thing to do moving forward, because you can start spinning out so easily, in these patterns, which, I get into, especially when I dip into the news or the media narrative, and it's just absurd. It's just become so absurd. It's almost like worse than tabloids, like at the grocery store. At least those that you can almost laugh at them, because people know it's like WWE. It's just entertainment. It's not really much of anything. But the problem that you see in like the world, the quote-unquote world, is just like the self-destructing nature of the people that believe the lies, and so it's like there's definitely some benefit in letting go of the lies, when really the mirror of reality, basically an easy way to think of it is almost like your inner man being externalized, and by that it's like your beliefs, your assumptions, your thoughts about certain things, your mental attitudes, feeling unworthy, guilty, shameful. A lot of times those start to express, and we unconsciously walk into these patterns over and over again. So when you look at a concept like stewarding as taking a big, perspective shift from, just being in the body and, thinking about me, to kind of getting out of that and looking at the areas of your life that are flourishing, that are doing really well, and looking at the areas of your life that are doing, in comparison, pretty shitty, and start to make identity shifts based on those things, and see where your blocks might be. So for some people, which I feel like is a big spell, is a scarcity spell, and not getting out of that and experiencing a more abundant attitude is huge. It's a huge game changer, because it's like you start looking at things, it's like there's plenty to go around. It's like this idea that there's not enough love, there's not enough compassion, there's not enough money, there's not enough food, there's not enough natural resources, there's just not enough of it. All that's not real, and you start to realize that as you put on abundant, and then make the shift through action. I feel like that's a big part of things, because I hear some people just like only having faith in the unseen, which is one thing, but through my experience, at least, it's been bringing out, and by manifestation, basically just has to do with having an inner vision and being able to bring that into physical reality, through however, whatever means. It's like, I was at a job earlier, it's like a plumbing thing. I had to run some new water lines, and so it's like, having the inner vision of like, how's this going to play out? What's the easiest way to do this that'll hook up, and being able to take the imaginal scene, I guess, just the imaginal, how am I going to do this, and then bring it into physical reality. And it's like the more that you're able to bring those things, like, how can I start a business, from my perspective, is like, how can I start a business and bring that into reality? Or it's like, how can I, manifest playing the guitar and having that perfect inner vision being exactly what I can play out in reality. And that's one of the big things, for maybe people that have never like played an instrument. It's like you start to see what's possible in like bringing that inner vision to reality, and it's transferable to everything, as far as I'm concerned, and really holding on to a strong faith that, with God, everything is possible. There might be some challenges and resistance, but to look at that and redefine that, revise that, as Neville Goddard would say, and like what I mean by that is when you have, when you start to move in a new direction, say you're really like kind of, my nose is all scratchy because all this freaking harvest time in Indiana, thousands of acres of corn and wheat and everything else is flying in the air. But like, being able to, I don't know, get from, maybe you're in a scarcity, but you're moving in a direction where you're consciously choosing abundance. It is a good example. It's the same thing. If it really is only two states, fear and love. But scarcity is reflective of fear, like a fear-based mentality of like, I got to hoard and there's not enough, and it's us versus them. And if I don't have this over here, then I won't be able to survive. And so it's survival of the fittest, and all these kind of mental attitudes we have about things not being abundant. It's part of like consciously going about your day is when those challenges come up. If you want to start to feel abundant, feel that mental energy. Like, who would you be if you were that ideal? It's about embodying that new man right now, the one that has everything, because God's already blessed you with everything. It's already been given to you, and the only thing holding it away from you is your resistance towards it. Which sounds crazy, because it's like, if I'm in like scarcity, but if I just won the lotto, then my problems would be solved. I mean, it's like, well, that's maybe what you think, but the problem is with like quick money, then all of a sudden, now there's the opposite fear of I'm gonna lose it all, and then I'm gonna start worrying about things like freezing my bank accounts, or the banking system could collapse, and so what I gotta do about moving this around so I have it all, and this and that, and like, you're just spinning out in the opposite direction, but it's still reflective of scarcity. And so instead of that scarcity mindset, choosing in the moment when you feel that fear, when you feel that resistance or that challenge that comes up, because a lot of times it does, because when you evolve in a more conscious way, when you look at everything as kind of mirroring back to you, your state of consciousness, when you're stewarding, you're able to look at it objectively of like, this is kind of just where I'm at. Maybe I want to grow more in abundance. Well, the block might start to manifest to show you what's holding you back. Maybe it's like you just don't feel worthy enough to make more money or have more nice things, or any of these stories that you're telling yourself. It could be related to not feeling worthy, and until you address like that, self-confidence maybe is the cure to being feeling unworthy, or maybe self-confidence, and then shifting out of you might have that resistance that's coming in your mind of like, well, here's all the reasons why I don't feel worthy. And then if you're not able to connect that in the present moment, there's like a time delay where it takes, it's weird, but it's like as you make the shift, you embody it first, and then it just gradually starts to harden into fact. And so it's like as you address these, like maybe not feeling worthy enough, maybe a challenge will come up that will get you into space where you can demonstrate worthiness, so that as you demonstrate through action, then you have new thoughts about a certain thing. So maybe scarcity is a good example, and you're walking around thinking money's hard to make, that only evil people in secret societies make money. That it's just made up out of nothing anyway, so it's just fake fiat currency and it's a Ponzi scheme and this and that, whatever story you have around it, where it's like, oh, I'm a good person and I believe money's evil, so it doesn't make sense for me to have it if I'm a good person. These stories that we tell ourselves about it. But then there's also like because I've been on both swings. I've been to food banks. I was on food stamps for years, and all that. I'd freaking out, my power to get shut off, and bills piling up. I know what it feels like to have that, and it sucks. It blows, and like it's not a noble thing to be broke. And you can't help nobody. You can't do anything to like benefit somebody that needs help. You're always on the asking end of things, or just not doing things, and so I feel like it's a huge spell, and part of breaking that spell, I found, is by spending, surprisingly, it's one of those counterintuitive things that happens very frequently in like spiritual dynamics, is these counterintuitive things. So it's almost like the cure to scarcity is to start spending, because what happens is as you're spending it, as you're giving it to others, you're giving it back to yourself, because we're all connected. And so through that demonstration of your faith that things are abundant, even if you're feeling the fear that says, no, it's scarce, you need to hoard this and you can't share it because there's not enoughness, there's not more coming, letting go of that and then stepping out in faith and demonstrating who you actually are by spending some. So say you got somebody, and like you won't have to look far for this to happen. As you make these shifts inwardly first, you'll see the reflection carry out, and you might see that challenge. Maybe you get a surprise bill, or maybe you get some weird shit going on where it's just like maybe some friend asked you for $20 that you're just like, really? You never asked me for anything. Within, or your family, maybe somebody in your family's like starting a business and it's like, oh, when you want to support it, you want to buy something from me, whatever it could be. I mean, there's so many different things, but take that opportunity when it presents itself and not look at it as like, oh, my old fears reemerging. Now I'm going to just stay in this little box because now I feel resistance. Well, recognize it as resistance, and instead of just unconsciously reacting to the resistance, start to consciously embody the new state. And so in that kind of scarcity state, well, I'm going to shift. And you start to put on how that would feel. How would you think? How would you process your world if you were like a billionaire, or where money just effortlessly flows to you, where it just comes to you, and it's like put it on the best you can. Sometimes it's hard to fully put it on, but take that next level up, wherever you can do it with mild amount of resistance. So maybe if you say like $1,000 a day is like, oh, that's way too much. And there's so much resistance when you hear that. It doesn't seem possible. Move that marker to where it does seem possible. Like what if you made $225 a day? Is that, can you put that on without the resistance? It's like, what about $400? Can you put that on without resistance? So find that spot for you, and then just embody that. And then, as you're holding on, realize that, that's coming to you. That being able to imagine it, feel the realness of it, realize that, it's already exists. You are pushing that reality away, but as you allow that to be who you actually are, because you are abundant, that is your natural inheritance as a child of God. It's part of God's promises that God takes pleasure in prospering you. And so by not believing that, you kind of push it away, but start realizing that that God is your provider. So how much will you let God provide for you? Would you let God provide $300 a day for you? $400 a day? I mean, it's all created up out of nothing anyway, so it's like real abundance really isn't in terms of paper. I mean, it's like, it's like I could, take this piece of paper, let me put my little signature on there, and like auction it. Maybe someone will buy it for $5-10, $100 even. I might sell myself short, but it's like doing something like that, which is something I do regularly with like music, where it comes from nothing, create it, it's out in physical reality. Now there's a value attached to it. It's like you can create money out of nothing too. It's like, to the right person, this might be worth $100, and it just is effortlessly to create as the Federal Reserve. I mean, just these bankers and everything too. I mean, you are the elite. So stop getting it twisted. Like there's this us versus they. It's pretty. I don't know where I'm stammering about, but like getting more into that, and then as the resistance maybe starts to creeping, you're like, oh, you're not worthy of that. Who do you think you are? You're not John Travolta. I don't know if that's kind of like a really well-known celebrity, or like, oh, Michael Jackson could do that, but you couldn't do that. Or I don't know, some big celebrity that everybody knows, it's like, oh, they can do that, but not you. It couldn't possibly be you. You're not worthy of that. Looking at that is like, oh, well, that's just some resistance that came up. But like, as that resistance comes up, instead of unconsciously getting, feeling the fear and then just becoming like, I don't want to move past that barrier, because the fear barrier, realize what you want is on the other side of that fear barrier. And that the fear is what is actually keeping you in this little box that you don't want to be in to begin with. And it's not real. It's a feeling. You're reacting to a feeling. You're reacting to a story in your mind that has no bearing on what's happening in the present moment. And so, as you do that and step into that new identity, it's all about your identity and who you are in Christ, what that means. It's like, who is the real you? Who did God create you as? What does that mean? But like, part of it is feeling it, realizing that you can be, do, or have anything. Nothing's impossible to you, that God's already created it. It's already yours. God's already gave it to you. But you just won't accept it. You won't believe that that's real. It sounds too good to be true, and says, I can't believe that. There's too much blah blah blah, fill in the blank of excuses. But start to embody that newness. And so as you do, in the challenge or the resistance comes up, look at it as an opportunity to level up. It's like, okay, well, I'm going from scarcity to abundance, and the seeds I plant today I'll reap tomorrow. Okay, it's like embody that state. Oh, there's like some resistance. Oh, I'm going to persist regardless. Oh, now somebody's asking me for $20. Fuck it, I'll just give them $20, because I know that this is all being orchestrated. This isn't a real problem. This isn't a real problem when I can think about something. Next thing you know, everything lines up to kind of challenge you. Does that seem real? I mean, does that seem like a real thing to worry about? If everything can conspire to force your resistance to show you that that's the reality, don't you see that that's not real? That you can experience the exact opposite end of that just as easily. It's like whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, it doesn't matter. You experience both. It's like if you're a pessimist, your experience of reality is pessimistic and negative. It's glass half empty. And that's what you experience because that's what you believe. It's always this reflection. So once you realize it's always reflecting this identity, then it's insane to keep experiencing these states of suffering that aren't real, because it's based on an illusion of separation that's not real, because you're connected with everything that's going on. And it's all being orchestrated by God ultimately. And when it manifests and this and that, the how, let God worry about that. You don't got to worry about how. You just worry about just being. It's a feeling thing, and it's a release from these stories of limitation and lack, and you should feel shameful and guilty and all of this shit, and so, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention so you can practice that. Now is the only time to practice that. And it's a battle to stay at rest in the present moment always. And so, it's not some linear thing tomorrow that you got to worry about. It's what's affecting your consciousness right now. And are you able to make peace with the present moment? Are you able to choose to be at peace right now? Choose to feel joyful, choose to feel grateful, gratitude. And all of these are just words, that what does that mean to you? I mean, experience what it means to you. I say, oh, be grateful. It's like, well, what does that mean? Does, if you are you grateful that you can breathe oxygen all the time? Without it, you'd be dead. Does grateful mean that you're just able to just be? Or does it mean that you're super excited? Because a lot of times the old mind, has a double edge. So it's like gratitude. If you can get something and be grateful, then you can take it away, and then you'll be spiteful. So what does gratitude even mean? What do you mean by gratitude? What does gratitude mean in oneness and connectivity? And that's for you to define. That's for you to deal with. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention. I got couple of things, with my handyman stuff I got to get back to. Kind of an easy day. I did that plumbing thing, and now I got to do some drywall repair and some painting on some, I don't know, some doors or something. And then I got to get some jobs lined up for the rest of the week. And so I don't know how that's going to all play out. Waiting for talking to a guy to let me into this house so I can get this shit going. But I had a little bit of time to get on here and kind of share some of my little perspective, and I think that's about it. I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. I appreciate your support spiritually and financially, and I appreciate you guys sharing the videos with your friends and all that kind of stuff. And more importantly, I appreciate you guys just doing this shit for yourself and seeing that it works. It's one thing to be in this, I need all the information I could ever absorb, versus like, okay, well, here it is, and I got to practice it. I got to do it. And you learn it through the doing. It's one thing to read a book about, I don't know, doing a backflip or something. It's like, okay, it's 80% confidence, 20% just going for it. Then you can know that. It's like, okay. But if you never sit there and try to do a backflip, I mean, you're missing out on it, and you're missing out on the joy of actually accomplishing a backflip. And so, yeah, I want to see more people, going for their dreams and their ambitions, and doing it with God and not feeling separate and using nothing but force and struggle and strife to achieve things. You can, but there's an easier way to do it, and a more journey and the destination being enjoyable thing as you're doing it, so you're not sitting there just reacting out of fear every step of the way. You're able to enjoy the flow, which ultimately, you once you start catching the pattern, the fear becomes less and less, and your day-to-day stuff, it just gets better and better, because you have less and less fear, and I don't want to say just fear and lies, flooding your consciousness, but, part of this thing is you don't have anything more to learn. It's a process of what you already know is what's holding you back. So it's like learning new things. It's more about what's causing you to, not be able to steward this now. Most of the shit's from childhood, that you learned of, like, no, this, without the rules, you aren't blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what? It's like, oh, this is how things are. You just sit in the corner and your parents will go do whatever. But everybody's raised differently, and so you got to look at all of these things that you've already learned and believe to be real, and start to allow God to unravel that fucking nest, that nest of thoughts that are just clustered and mostly in error, and that's a big part of this thing, is like, renewing your mind, letting go of the old, and letting God give you a new narrative, with the, and I can guarantee is unique for you, because everybody's learned a different way, from just yeah, their life experience. And so, yeah, with that being said, I think we'll bounce. So, thanks everybody for listening, and have a good rest of your now, and God bless.